Henry Meistre, Managing Director of Geely Cars. Geely, that's a brand new name to the marketplace in South Africa, but not quite really, because you were in here once before into the market, and pardon the pun, the wheels fell off.
Yeah, the Geely is not that new, or Geely. It's been here since roughly 2007, and there was a previous importer and distributor. They unfortunately fell upon hard times with a crash, and they stopped trading in about late 2009, early 2010. And we took over the rights, and we started importing and distributing the cars in 2011.
What made you do that? Because, I mean, there's so many cars coming into the market. You've got the Koreans coming in, you've got other Chinese products in here, Indian products, Italian, German, French, I mean, League of Nations of cars. Why add one more?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's a case of product that's coming from China is improving all the time. Obviously, Geely is not small; they're enormous in their own market. Their market, for example, will do 1.2 to 1.5 million cars a month. The entire new car market in China, and Geely, just this particular new model, which we'll be launching in about May of this year, they're selling 45,000 units in China. So the numbers do justice, and the quality of the product has improved and evolved incredibly. Even if one just goes back to the early Geelys that came out in 2007 and 8, and you look at what they had then to what they have now, it's a vast difference and improvement. And I suppose one has to just take lessons, and I was very fortunate to be part of the Korean onslaught in South Africa and just see what happened there. It's a little bit of history retold. The products that came then were similar to the early models that we had and how it's evolved, and you didn't want to miss out on what's happening to the Koreans today. We hope that the same thing will happen with
Aren't you worried about creating a long-term establishment in South Africa? I mean, it must take an awful lot of money, an awful lot of publicity, advertising, and getting people to accept a brand that, let's be honest, the Chinese haven't got the greatest name for quality. And you've said it's improving all the time.
Yeah, look, I think anyone who says that's not a hurdle to get over is lying when it comes to Chinese cars, because most certainly it is. The Chinese product was not very original. A lot of it was based on copycat technology and design. But in the last while, you've seen how the Chinese have sort of awoken to the fact that they have to become globally competitive. They have to understand what other markets want. And point in case, Geely, they decided that they needed technology. They needed to up the game in terms of quality, safety, efficiencies. So they went out and they bought Volvo. So they now own Volvo, and there's this technology swap that's occurring at the moment. And again, just from a safety point of view, that's one of the very, very big issues when it comes to Chinese cars. People say, well, how safe are they? And the European media was ruthless with Chinese cars. They wanted to come into Germany and the likes in the 2005, 2006 era. And they called the cars catastrophic when it came to crash tests. Now, here's a car that you see in such a short period of time. This car's gotten a 4-star Euro NCAP crash test, not Chinese, Euro NCAP crash test rating. So this is a Chinese car that's just been launched recently by Geely. It's not even here yet, and the quality is phenomenal, and it's a 4-star crash test rating. So they're upping their game incredibly quickly, but by being clever in terms of how they behave globally.
What you're actually telling me is the research and development is now not done in China. It is done outside, and it's adopting European, American, or whatever standards.
Not at all, no. They do a lot in China, but I think they have access to research and development in places like Sweden, even South Africa. We give them a little bit of feedback, the little bit that we can on the small numbers that we do here, but we most certainly go back to them and say, look, this doesn't work here, or we need increased cooling, or we need softer brake pads, or the shock absorbers can't cope on our corrugated gravel roads, and my experience with the other Chinese that I've been involved with, These are the kind of things that we've developed and upgraded over a period of time with them. So we do local R&D here as well.
So you've got your own research and development here in South Africa?
Yes, we've got a very small little centre. I mean, we're a small little company, but most certainly you are for local adaptation. I think most of the guys do it, but most certainly we do evaluations, we do testing, and then we give feedback to the factory, and then slowly but surely we upgrade the product to hopefully being as suitable as possible for this market.
Double question here. The old Geelys,
yes,
are you servicing them, and are you performing a backup for those old Geelys for the people who bought them? And for the new ones, what can people look forward to? What can they rely on you for?
Well, yes, the first part of the question in terms of the older vehicles, which was the CK model, they're able to service their cars at all our dealerships, which is 40 dealerships countrywide. So they get the full backup from that point of view, parts and service. Obviously, we don't honour those warranties because that was from a previous company. On the new cars, though, we have 100,000 kilometre warranties, which are underwritten and administered by SA Warranties, which is part of Imperial Group. So the backing in terms of the warranty is there. There's 40 dealers nationwide. We did a smart move, if I can pat ourselves on the back. We invested in a company called Part Support 2 years ago. They have been very involved in Chinese importation of parts, particularly. A very, very seasoned and sharp parts guy used to be with Mercedes-Benz. It in fact was started by him, and he brings our parts in. We are majority shareholder in that company now, and that gets distributed daily, the parts through to the dealer network. And we're very proud of the fact that we're sitting at about 93 to 94% supply rate at this stage, which is phenomenal. It's better than a lot of the big established brands.
I'd like to quote something here from Johan van Vreden, who is the ombudsman for the motor vehicle industry in South Africa.
Yes.
He says, I caution people against buying Chinese new brands.
I do too. So, and I think what we need to do is be very fair on what his comment is there. I think what Johan is saying is be very, very careful of distributors, fly-by-nights, who bring in a couple of cars and see where it goes and what happens. And I'll quote you, in early 2007, we had a meeting at Westbank's offices at the new fancy head office in Fairlands. And it was a Chinese importer and distributor meeting. There were 27 Chinese brands that were either in South Africa or busy with homologation. We wrote them all down on the board. And if you look today who there is, there's GWM, who's done a really good job. I'm proud to say that I was a very big part of that. There's Geely. And then there's one or two of the taxi companies. There's JMC. There's not many left. So he makes a very good and valid statement.
What are we looking at cost-wise in this country compared to other cars? Give me an alternative to that and measure it against it.
I think what we sit with here, Tony, is spec and vehicle. Here we've got a 1300 car with quite a large amount of spec in it. Air conditioners, electric windows, central lockings, airbags, ABS, as much as 6 airbags, depending on which model you go for here. And yet it's competing against the cars that are roughly 1,000 cc's to 1.1s. And if I can mention the names, it's your little i10 Hyundais, your Kia Picantos, and then some of the imported cars that are coming out of China, out of India now, Indicas and those kind of cars. That's really who it competes with. Pricing, you're starting in the upper 80s, and you go up to roughly early 100, just over 100 for the standard LC, and then of course you get the cross version, which has it's got raised suspension and the spare wheel on the back, and it just looks a little chunkier and a little bit more masculine, and that starts at the upper 90s and goes to about 110,000 rand.
Right, let's drive this one across the table and bring in the other one there.
Yes.
And this is the one that's coming onto the market when?
This car should be launched. We're doing a pre-launch on this car in about April, but we will launch it officially if all goes well and there's no shipping delays, we'll launch it in early May. So before mid-year it'll be here.
Now what kind of price range are we looking at for this?
Again, pricing is unconfirmed, and if I just look at what happened to the Rand today, I shudder, but we're hoping to keep the car at below the 200,000 Rand mark. It's a substantial car. It's an 1800 with 103 kilowatt. very highly spec car. As I said earlier, quality is from a Chinese perspective, it's phenomenal. Safety is right up there with the Japanese, Koreans. And size-wise, if I can compare it, because it's difficult to measure it here, it's very similar to a Jetta stroke Elantra, that sort of size car. So puts it into perspective there.
If you had to be able to talk to every single purchaser in this country right at this very moment, what would you say to them about buying Geelys?
You know, I've developed a little booklet for our salespeople in South Africa, and I think it tries to answer rather what the concerns would be of a buyer of a Chinese car. And you know, I've listened to those questions for many, many years, because as I say, I was there with the Hyundai and the Kias and the GWMs. So it's the same old pattern. People have concerns about resale values. They have concerns about safety, quality, service, backup, parts. So we've developed this little booklet where we try and prepare a salesperson with facts, not this is what I say as a salesman, but actual facts. How many cars do they produce? How big they are? People don't know. I noticed you raised your eyebrows. People don't know that they own Volvo. This company owns Volvo. This company owns the second largest gearbox manufacturer in the world, called DSI in Australia. They own London taxi cabs. So Geely, we fob it off in South Africa as it's a small no-name brand yet, but it's a seriously big player. So I'm trying to educate the people to be able to go to the people and answer all those concerns that they may have.